So welcome to my review of Dragon Quest 1-3 on the Nintendo Switch. And I want to thank Square Enix for sending over a review copy so I could try these games out. Now, to begin with, I was going to give a small history lesson here, is that I played Dragon Quest 1-3 back in the day when it was originally released in 1988 as Dragon Warrior. So they brought it over here. They had to rename it Dragon Warrior because of licensing issues. And then I went on to play number 2, and then number 3 and 4, and so on. So I have already finished these games. I finished them back in 1988 and the early 90s. So I have a bit of a history with them. And then I gotta also say that Dragon Quest is a very important series. It really is the birth of JRPGs, and that all started in 1986 in Japan. And here's all the originals. Here's Dragon Quest 2 and 3. And do you recognize the artwork there? Absolutely. Akira Toriyama. So the series was started by Yuji Horii, and then Akira Toriyama was brought in to do the monster designs and the character designs. And it was the birth of a brand new thing, and it took Japan by storm. And JRPGs were realistically born at that point and became a widespread thing. And after that, every company was trying to do an RPG. And those games were influenced by Western RPGs like Ultima and Wizardry at the time. And over the years, there's been a lot of ports of these games for a lot of different systems. So the Game Boy Color, in Japan there was Super Famicom versions. There was a Wii version that brought the ports over there as well. So there's been nothing but ports of these games over the years, and so be it, because they're so iconic. So that brings us into this review today. Are these games worth it on the Nintendo Switch? Are they good? Do they measure up to the past games? Where this is a bit of a mixed bag, for sure. There's some positive there, but there's also, unfortunately, some negatives. And you know me on this channel, it really upsets me when I go in and I really want to like something, and it just kind of misses the mark in quite a few little spots, and I have to talk about all those things. So let's start off. How are the graphics for these games? Where they are realistically ports of the mobile game. They also went to the PS4, but I held my phone up because I have the mobile games on my phone, and I was comparing it on the screen to what I was seeing on my phone, and they're pretty much the phone games, pretty much. So that's maybe not a bad thing. Blown up on a screen, it looks pretty good. You're looking at it and you're like, okay, that's fine. It's a port of a mobile game blown up. Obviously, there's been some work there to update the text so it looks good on a big screen TV. Standing still, it looks great. Unfortunately, when you start moving your character, and this is on all three of them, the screen stutters. So your character's moving, he looks fine, but the screen, as it's scrolling, is stuttering, and it's really jarring, and it really is upsetting to see. I was like, oh no. And I was like, okay, maybe I can look past that. Okay, I'll look past that. So I'm trying to play the game, but it seems very low frame rate. So it's kind of like, even when you're moving your character around, it's just it's jittering a little bit. It doesn't feel smooth, and it doesn't make you feel good when you're playing it. You're like, oh, okay. And then obviously you leave town. This is an RPG. We fight monsters. You gain gold. You buy weapons. You fight bigger monsters until you get to the final bad guy in the game, which in the very first game is the Dragon Lord. In the second game is Hargon. So I step out of town and I'm like, okay, let's get into combat. Let's see what this has to offer. And if you play the mobile game or not, it's a redrawing of the original character sprites from the original games. And again, it seems like it's like a flash drawing. It's not really done extraordinarily well. I'll say this much. The graphics from 1 to 2 to 3 get better in each game. So the graphics do get better. It's almost like the development team was getting better at figuring out what they were doing with each particular game. So when you get to the third game, it looks way better. But the hand-drawn graphics of the combat is a little bit strange, per se. And I think what upsets me about this is that this is a real opportunity to do the Dragon Quest franchise some good. and to really bring it to fresh, brand new eyes who have never discovered it. So a lot of people are going to go in and play Dragon Quest 1 to 3, and they're going to go, oh, wow, oh, boy. And to be honest with you, I prefer the Super Famicom port of it. I thought those would look even better blown up. And so this, I don't know, it's just the way this is converted, the way it plays, it doesn't come off as really nice in that regard. The one thing that is a little bit easier to navigate is the controls of the menu. So in the original game, to walk upstairs, you had to go through a menu and pick stairs every time. And you had to pick up different things for opening up doors and stuff. So it was very cumbersome to do anything in the game, where in these versions, you can just walk up to a door, you press the button, you step through it. So it eliminates all that needless menu shifting that you had to do in the original games. Some highlight moments are the music. The music in all three games is really good, and I think the best way I can explain that is just for you to listen to it right here. So that's one thing that the game has going for it, is the music is really, really good. Now, how are the storylines for all these things? How did the storylines hold up? Well, let's be honest here. These are classics of the RPG genre. So to begin with, in the old days, these stories were very, very simple. So in the very first game, you're a hero and you're following in the footsteps of a long past dead hero called Erdrick. And you got to collect his armor and do all that kind of stuff and go and find the Dragon Lord that is creating great corruption and hell for everybody who lives in this world. And you go to him after fighting 1,000 enemies and you defeat him, and that's the end of the game. You save the princess. Very simple stuff. In the second game, it takes place 100 years later. In the first game, you could only use one character. You can only use your main hero. In the second game, you can get a party of up to 3 people. And in the third game, you get a party of up to 4 people in there, and you can change the classes in the fourth game. Okay, but in the second game, it takes place 100 years later, and you got to defeat another evildoer called Hargon. Now, the third game is interesting because, wrap your head around this one, it's a prequel to the first game. So it tells the story of that legendary hero, and it takes place before 1. So 3 is before 1, and you get to find out who the legendary hero is and all that, and how he passes on everything to the hero in the first game. So anyways, wrap your head around that one. So there's some kind of interesting things going. Obviously, my favorite game in the series is the fourth game, but there's something to be said. It's very cool that we finally have all of the Dragon Quest games finally released in modern times. I said that before and people were like, no, it was released on the NES. And I'm like, yes, I know. But it's really cool that people can play 1 to 3 if they're curious. And they can play 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8 on the DS and the 3DS. That's pretty cool. And then, obviously, after that, we get into 9, which came out on the DS. 10 we never got here. And then the wonderful 11, which you can play on nearly every console known to mankind now, because the Switch version is also released. So there's a lot of really cool stuff happening here. So at the end of the day, do I recommend these games? Well, the price is always the point, right? And so in the first game I think is $6.99. The second game is $8.99. These are US prices. And then the third game, I believe, is $16.99. So the price of entry is not huge, but just know that these are not wonderful ports. The artwork is not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but the music is really good and the original gameplay is all there for you. So if you are curious about those early Dragon Quest games, you can play them. You can go and play them right away. And that's kind of cool. For me, personally, I played, as I said, all of the original games, and I really love the beautiful pixel art of these and of the 16-bit versions type of thing. And these are such iconic games from a different time and a wonderful time. I really can't say enough about the Akira Toriyama artwork and the simplistic storylines back then. It is the foundations of RPGs now, and to me, that is a very important thing, but it's up to you guys. If you're interested in these games, if you're planning on picking them up, let me know down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.